Can you give people kind of a quick synopsis as to what you're saying in this article and how you got there?
Right. So basically, I'm looking at what's going to happen in 2021 and how strong the recovery is going to be. And I've been fairly optimistic that once we move past the next couple months and this latest surge in coronavirus cases, that we really have a nice setup for moving into the next year. And I think there's a lot of different elements to that setup, but I think a big one is the job market, I think, is going to bounce back a little bit more strongly anticipate, and that's going to be a good setup for even the second part of the year when I think that there's going to be a lot of pent up demand that really comes into the economy fairly quickly, and that suggests to me that this would be much more of a V-shaped recovery than I think people have tended to anticipate.
I think, a lot of us remember kind of 2008 and so on, and the collapse that happened then. And I think when we started to think about a bad economy and kind of the doomsday scenario, a lot of us can remember how bad that was, but it's not necessarily apples and apples at all, is it?
No, and I think that's a great point. And one I try to drive home quite a bit is that this we always kind of fight the last battle, right? The last battle was the last recession. This isn't the last recession. There's a lot of differences. I would say there really wasn't anything from the macroeconomic perspective wrong with the economy in January, whereas in the last recession, once you started, once that was going into that recession, there was a big imbalance in the economy in the form of a housing bubble, and I think that was one factor that was relevant. Another issue that I think is very much relevant is we didn't the financial system now isn't damaged like it was then. Household wealth has actually increased over this period of time, so it's been a good period for households in aggregate, believe it or not. Stock prices are up, home prices are up. There's been a lot of fiscal stimulus that has added to people's saving. Credit cards debt is down. So there's been actually a good boost to household spending, whereas last time household wealth was crushed. Another big factor is, and it's a big demographic push, is that back then the millennial generation was just kind of entering into their college years or just getting out of their college years. Now there's a big surge of millennials that are going to be entering their home buying years and their high income earning years. And we haven't really seen that since the baby boomers moved into that same position in the 1990s. So I think there's a huge demographic factor that's also supportive of the economy over the next couple of years. And that's one reason I think we've seen housing markets boom. So this is not the last recession or the last recovery. This is something very much different. And there's probably 6 or 7 other differences I could go on about, but I'll leave it there.
Now, I think a lot of the people at home, and you explained this in the article, but a lot of people at home, whether they're directly affected by the hardships that are happening or know people or just kind of watching it all unfold on the news, they're trying to figure out how again are things going so well right now and looking as though they're going to get even better when they seem pretty terrible right in front of my eyes.
And that is always one of the hardest things to comprehend. The next 2 or 3 months are expected to be fairly challenging as these coronavirus cases have gotten higher and have stayed higher. I try to look on the other side of that. A lot of what I do is large part of it ends up being for financial market participants, and so I'm trying to figure out, well, how is this going to evolve over the next 2 or 3 months or beyond that. I do think, as behavior changes and restrictions kick in, we will eventually get to the peak of this surge like we have in the past, and we'll be on the downside of the surge. And then as we get to the downside of the surge, we'll have the vaccines look like they're going to be rolling out. And so you get to the middle of next year, and you are possibly in a very good place for a rapid normalization of activity. I think that some of the kinds of activity, service sector activity, there's going to be a lot of demand for vacations, restaurants, leisure and hospitality events. That's going to come on, I think, fairly quickly once people feel that those activities are again safe.
Now, everybody is going to be feeling pretty comfortable and wanting to feel as though your outlook is the correct one because it is a sunny outlook. It's one that shows a very fast recovery and kind of life back to normal quickly. What, in your eyes, could derail what you are kind of looking at down the line, what could happen in the infinite possibilities of things that could change between now and in the next few months.
Right. And I think the kind of one of the most obvious things is we're not able to roll out a vaccine fast enough, or as fast as we would like, that the surge in cases extends and becomes worse than we have had in previous situations, that we had to do a hard lockdown again, like we ended up doing last spring. Those are the obvious things that could really derail, at least in the near term, this outlook, and then push it back, into later in 2021 or early into 2022. I don't know if that's my base case scenario at this point, but certainly that's the thing that's hanging out there as the big unknown for me. And
No,
sorry,
please go ahead. Continue.
I was going to add on to, I think that some additional fiscal stimulus from the federal government would be helpful in supporting the economy through this next few months, if it's absolutely necessary. But from a macroeconomic perspective, but I think to ease the pain that some households are going to still be experiencing over this near term, I think that would be another way to sort of help bring out that more optimistic scenario.
Got it. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Anytime.